Mom, I came as quickly as I could. What happened? It's Isabel. Isabel. What's happened to Isabel? What's wrong with my sister? Betsy, my dear, your sister has gone completely mad. Mad? Where is she? What's wrong with her? She has cut us off. Mom, please speak in ways that I can comprehend, because I do not understand. That loser that we warned her about, who have no proper educational background, who clearly come into her life pretending to be a Christian, because he wants our money, she ran off and married him. Isabel got married. What? Mom, I think that you have a big misunderstanding. Isabel and I are very, very close. She would never do any such thing without telling me. She would have never gone off and marry and not tell her only sister. My dear, not only is your sister married, she has sent back all the credit cards to your father, and she said that if we cannot accept her husband, then she will no longer be a part of this family. What? You know as the baby, how close she is with your father. I do not know how he's going to take all this. I did not want to upset him, because he was already so much against this relationship. We all are, and to see she went off and do this, your father will not take it, Betsy. So Dad does not know about this marriage? No, my dear, your father is going to take it very, very hard. I already called your brother and told him everything. Maybe I should keep it from your father, and tell him some story that Isabel wants to travel the world again. That way if she is not calling he will think that it is because she is traveling and the connection to reach us is bad. I already told your brother not to say a word to your father. No, Mom, you must tell Dad, so that he can bring her back. If you do not tell Dad, Mom, I am afraid that I will have to tell him. You know that she listens to Dad and Dad will be able to bring her back to us. What kind of man would marry a young girl without her parents' blessing? Someone who called himself a Christian. Now you see why I do not believe. I have counseled countless so-called Christian, whose life is in a deplorable condition, and yet they are talking about God this and God that, yet they come and pay me hundreds of dollars to figure out their problems. How could this man go behind our back and do this with Isabel? Christian, give me a break. Well, in his defense, he did come to us on several occasions, but we made it quite clear that he was beneath our daughter, that he was just after our money, and as such, we will never accept him. I see. Well, Mom, you just have to tell Dad, and for sure he will bring her back. Dad will do it. You know how ruthless he can get. Please tell Dad, Mom. I am going to miss my sister terribly.
Betsy was not saying to tell her father because she was so concerned about her sister's well-being. She wanted her father to know because from the moment Isabel came, who was 10 years younger, she always felt that she took her place in her father's hearts, and so she always felt left out of her father's love. Now she thinks it is a great opportunity for her father to turn against Isabel and embrace her. So Betsy continues.
Mom, it is clear that Isabel has been brainwashed by this man. We have to let Dad know what she has done, so that he can bring her back to us, Mom. Unless you think that she does not care about us anymore. Betsy, my dear, she does care, but your sister thinks that she is in love, but you know all that will change if hard times come. You were always privileged, and that young man just have a 9-to-5 job, barely making anything. It will only be a matter of time, and she will see that she made a big mistake. Anyway, I will do as you said, and I will tell Marcus about what transpired with Isabel. Okay, Mom, I'd better be going. I had to move my 1 o'clock appointment because of your call. Now I have to get back. I will be having a late evening. Please let me know what happened with Dad. I will, my dear. We will talk later.
Meanwhile, at Isabel and Leroy home. Welcome home, my dear husband. How was your day?
It was very busy. I am so hungry. What did you cook?
Cook? I did not know that I had to cook. I cannot cook.
You can't cook? Then who made those meals? I had at your place a few times. It was seriously gourmet.
I ordered in Leroy. I never had to cook in my life, clean or do anything for myself. My parents always had someone to do all of that for me and my big brother Nathan, and my big sister Betsy. But I am willing to learn.
I see.
Tell you what, go and have your bath, and I will run out and get us something. I promise, I will learn how to cook, but as for cleaning, I will not do that, so we have to get a maid.
A maid, Isabel, we cannot afford that.
Don't worry, I will pay from my allowance that I get from my parents. I never really had to use it, so I saved up almost $15,000.
$15,000.
Yes, I think about that, it could be more. Tell you what, that sister at church been asking for something to do, and been asking me to look out. I will get her to come and clean for us, and pay her. Like I said, I never had to use that money. I always use the credit cards Dad gave me if I needed anything. I can use it to pay the maid, and maybe get some cooking lesson. As you know, I gave Mom the credit cards to give back to Dad. I told Mom that I did not need them anymore, that you will take care of me, but my allowance is in my own account and I will pay the maid from that. Go and take your bath. By the time you are finished, I will be back with something for us to eat.
Okay, my love. Sounds good to me.
Later the day.
Married, Isabel went and married that loser, and without our blessing.
I'm afraid so, dear.
Listen, that marriage will not last. No one will take our little girl and manipulate her to cut off her parents. That husband of hers is looking for money. He is a gigolo. We must cancel all the credit cards.
My dear, no need for that. She left all 5 of them.
What? She did that. This is serious. I must have him investigated. I will have him checked out, and I will make him regret the day he set eyes on our daughter.
Now you're talking, my husband. Let him feel your wrath for going against our family and causing Isabel to cut us off.
As Jane was encouraging her husband to deal with Leroy, Isabel's husband, a 30-year-old memory flashed back into her mind. The doctor had said that Jane would never conceive, that both she and Marcus was incapable of having children together or with anyone else. Jane and Marcus were young, dedicated Christians, and so their pastor Andrews gave them a promise from the Lord because of their faithfulness. Marcus and Jane both came from very humble background, but pride caused them to forget their humble beginnings, and the blessing from both God and man upon their lives. 30 years ago. Pastor, we have been serving and serving, both with our time and the barely little we have, and now 8 years of marriage, and still no child, no children to show for it. We have become a laughing stock among our village people. I am called barren and my husband called sterile. We are a shame among our people, who at first was encouraging Marcus to find someone else until they found out that the doctor said that he could not father children.
Dry your tears, Sister Jane. Our Heavenly Father have a great plan for you and Brother Marcus. Never forget that although man sometimes sees things impossible, with God, all things are possible. By this time next year, you will embrace a baby boy, and you shall call him Nathan, which means gift from God. Not long after you will become pregnant again and you will have a baby girl, and you shall call her Betsy, which means pledged to God. Both you and your husband and children will be that light to your people, who still believe in traditional gods. You must tell them what Jesus did, and how real. Your children shall be that living testimony, and they will all come to Christ. There is a great blessing of riches coming to your husband. He will obtain more money than he will be able to spend in his lifetime. However, he must be careful not to set his eyes on it, or become prideful. As you know, I am called to Macedonia, so I must go. Elder Matthew and Deacon Williams along with many of the other brethren will continue this work, but you and Brother Marcus must go back to your village, and build a church, and start the work of God there.
Man of God, we will do exactly as God told you for us to do. This word of a child is wonderful. I have never seen you gave a word that did not come to pass, so I know that my babies are coming. God is truly gracious, even to mine and Marcus's family, our family, that does not believe anymore, and have gone back to their former beliefs. I learned that my great-great-grandmother was a woman of God. This I did not learn from my family but in school, as she was a great evangelist. I am named after her. The name Jane means that God is gracious. Now I see all the way down here. God has brought back His grace to us, His unmerited favor to Marcus and I, and to think that it is in school that Marcus and I was won to the Lord, and when we try to tell our people, they will not hear of it. God is indeed gracious, because He sends us His grace again, that will cause me to have the fruit of the womb. Thank you so much, Pastor.
Sister Jane, you are an helpmeet to Brother Marcus, so be careful not to forget God like your people did many years ago. Go back to the village after your children are born. They will be that testimony, who will cause them to turn back to Christ. Your great-great-grandmother's prayers for her family is being answered through you and your husband.
I receive and believe what you have said, and I will serve God even more than I did before, and I will dedicate my children to Him the moment they are born. They will serve God all the days of their lives, and I will go back to the village with Marcus and do as the Lord asked of us. The very next year Jane had the baby boy, and following her son, her baby girl came. Both they and the doctor knew that they obtained a double miracle from God. 3 months before their son Nathan was born, Marcus's boss, a multimillionaire, left everything to Marcus, causing the word of their pastor to come to pass, both for the blessing of their children and for the riches. Sadly, instead of going back into that which their pastor had instructed, they moved to the big city with their 2 children, where Marcus gained more and more wealth. They became philanthropists, where they gave generous donations to causes from which they got multiple awards. They never went back to the village. As the years passed, no one could tell that Jane and Marcus were once devout Christians. They were so far removed, becoming like aristocrats, whom people thought were self-made, hard workers who gained their money by their own hard-working efforts. Marcus's boss, who left him all his millions, made that promise to Marcus, who was working with him from he was a boy, till he graduated and was working at the company. Marcus became his greatest confidant, and so he had told Marcus, "One day I will leave this all to you, for your kindness to me, a stranger in this land," and he did. Sadly, neither Marcus or Jane kept their promise to God or man. Now, back to the present.
Jane, I refuse to let our daughter be stuck with a loser. When she came to us a year ago to tell us about this loser, I thought that it was a passing fad, as with the others, but then she said about him being a man of God. Liar wants to rip us off. I even offered that fool a check for $100,000 to leave our daughter alone, and he refused. I will deal with him.
Deal with him, my dear? I do not want anything to interfere with the garden party that will be coming up. This will be the first one that Isabel will not be in attendance. I will have to tell our high society friends that Isabel traveled.
2 years later. We have a really big problem. My allowance is all gone, and you kept losing one job after the other. Leroy, I have no choice than to reach out to my parents for help. You have lost over 8 jobs, and you seem to have difficulty finding another. The bank is going to take our home. I have to reach out to my dad. All our savings are all gone, Leroy. We are completely broke.
Honestly, Jane, I wish you did not have to, but we have nowhere else to turn. Look what happened to me today. I got the job yesterday, and was to report for work today, and I went and they said that it was a mistake. The job was already given to someone. It is like something is fighting us. I prayed and prayed to no avail. I even went to my friend who is a seer, and he cannot tell me anything.
Seer friend, you should not have done that, Leroy. You know that as Christians, we must only go to God for spiritual help. That is what Pastor said, and that is what you said to me as well. I am really surprised at you for doing that. The main reason why I distance myself from my family is so we could serve God in truth, and my parents believes in themselves, looking down their noses at others. I remember the day I went there to tell my parents about you, a man of God, and that I gave my life to the Lord. They both look at me as if I committed a crime. I do not know why they are like that, and both my brother and sister want nothing to do with the things of God. They are just into high society things and high-class status. Honey, I do not want to end up on the street, so I have to go to them for help. Isabel went to her parents for help, which they readily agreed without hesitation. She did not know that her father was behind all her husband's job loss and all their financial troubles, with every place refusing to give them a loan, and he losing his jobs. Soon they began to poison her mind, and telling her that Leroy just want to live off her. At first Isabel would not hear of it, then Betsy, who pretended to be for them, said something to her that caused her to think.
Isabel, honey, I know that things have been very hard for you, with all your allowances gone and Leroy not being able to hold down a job. Sis, don't you find it strange that before he met you he kept his job and was in it for 10 years, and since he met you he lost it and have lost several others? Did he tell you that he came to borrow money from me?
He did what? I cannot believe that.
Just asked him.
I will. Betsy did not tell Isabel that she was the one who called Leroy and offered to help because she knew from her mother what her father was doing to Leroy.
He was also talking up to my friend Selma, asking her for a loan knowing that she is a single woman.
That's enough, Betsy. He was talking to her about God. He would never ask her for financial help without telling me about it. You know what, I have to go. Isabel walked out on her sister, refusing to believe that her husband asked her sister and her sister's friend for help. 1 hour later. Leroy, I did not know that you were speaking to my sister behind my back. Did you ask her for help?
I.
Leroy, why did you ask my sister for help and not say anything to me? I have been praying and crying out to the Lord for us. You know my family that they are into money. It is like money is their God, and you cannot go behind my back and do things without my knowledge, because then I cannot trust you. She pointed out that since we've been together you seem to have difficulty keeping a job, that you had no trouble in keeping before.
Isabel, please, it's not like that. Your sister was the one who called me. I did not know where she got my number from. She begged me not to say anything to you, and she offered me financial help, to which I refused. She then told me about her friend that she gives loan, and that she will put in a good word for me. I called her out of desperation to get money to pay our bills. I am so sorry, honey. I should have told you.
You know that I thought that my sister was lying. In fact, I walked out on her telling her that you do not keep anything from me. Leroy, why would you do such a thing? I gave up everything for you, and cut my family off for you. I never reached out to them, until when I spoke to you that I was going to do so. Why did you keep this secret of my sister and her friend from me? How am I supposed to trust you now? You know what? Don't answer that. I am going to go by my parents. I will be spending the night. 1 night turned into 2 nights and then a month. Leroy tried to keep things to himself, but when Isabel sent him the video of him holding her sister's friend in his arms, he tried to explain to Isabel that when he went to her office to get the loan, her condition for the loan caused him to refuse it. He told her as they were walking down the stairs she let out a scream, and he looked back in time to catch her in his arms to help her from falling. However, Isabel did not believe, because Betsy told her that she saw them together and took the video, and so, 2 days later she sent divorce paper. Leroy was in shock, and so that day he went and he told their pastor everything.
I don't know what to do, Pastor. Her family convinced her that I am with her because they are wealthy. I love her truly, Pastor. It's just that since we've been together, I have lost my long-time job of 10 years and multiple other jobs. I have not been able to keep a job, Pastor. It is like everything is against me, against our relationship. I went outside God to ask for help, and it is like it brought a curse into me. I have not been able to hear from God, whom I used to hear clearly before. You know, the Lord told me to marry her, that He will give us a great ministry, and through her life her family will be saved, restored, and as they are one to Christ. How can this happen now when she is asking for divorce?
Brother Leroy, I will seek the Lord on both your behalfs. I am feeling like something is just not right.
1 week later.
Isabel, it is so good to hear from you. I cannot believe that you are calling me. The last time you said only through your lawyer.
Leroy, it's not what you think. I am calling you in desperation. I know that you used to be a man of prayer. Please reach out to Pastor for me. He tried calling me but I did not answer. Please, my father needs prayer desperately. Daddy collapsed last night and the doctor do not know what is wrong with him.
I am really sorry to hear about your father. I will call Pastor right away.
Leroy called their pastor and told him about the situation. The pastor felt a strong pull from the Lord to go to the hospital. Isabel gave the information to Leroy, who then told their pastor, and so Pastor went to see Isabel's father. When Pastor got there, the whole family including Isabel was there. Isabel got up and greeted Pastor, and took him to her father's room. To their utter astonishment, from the door, They could hear him screaming in terror, saying, "Forgive me, I'm sorry Lord, please take me out of this fire, out of this torment. Please Lord, forgive me, I am so sorry that I disobeyed you." Isabel ran back to tell her family what was going on. Her mother began to cry hysterically, and then she asked Nathan and Betsy to excuse her. She must talk to Isabel alone. She then told Isabel everything, from the past to now. Isabel was in big shock. She had no idea that at one time her parents was devotedly serving God, but they both forsake the path of God and their family background. She then told Isabel of how God blessed her womb 2 times when the doctors said it was not possible, and how God surprised them 10 years later after Nathan and Betsy and Isabel came.
Mom, how could you and Dad turned away from God? After all the miracles and answered prayers, how could you turn away from your family and forget about them? How could you move on for 30 years and live your life with no conscience? This reminded me of what God said in Jeremiah 2:32, "My people have forgotten me days without number." I cannot believe that you and Dad did that to God and your families. Does Nathan or Betsy knows? Just like you, they think that your father and I was raised in the orphanage, and through hard work, we are where we are today. My God, Mom, that is a really awful thing that you and Dad did. You both kept this secret for over 30 years. That is why God is punishing us now. Punishing you? Don't you think that if God wanted to punish you and Dad, He would have done it long time ago? How do you explain your father's collapsed, and my diagnosis? What diagnosis? My dear, it appears that I am having a mesenterious bone disease. They do not know why, and it had nothing to do with my age. In fact, the doctors are surprised that I am able to stand, because it is causing my bones to be brittle. This kind of disease leads to terminal because there are no cure. I have been given the best of the best treatment, but I kept getting worse and worse. How long have you known about this, Mom? Does Nathan or Betsy knows? No, they do not. This is just between your father and I, and our doctor. Mom, you must stop with all these secrets and come clean to us. Isabel, honey, have told you everything. Then you better go and tell Nathan and Betsy everything, Mom. I will, because I do not know how much time I have left. Mom, I truly believe that God can heal you. I will go and get Betsy and Nathan. This room is private. You must tell them everything.
Meanwhile, Pastor Peters was praying earnestly, asking for mercy for Marcus. Marcus then took a deep breath, and then he awoke and sat up in the bed. He was shaking for a while, looking terrified, and then he confessed everything to Pastor Peters, including what he did to Leroy. He told the pastor that he was burning in fire, and he thought that would be his end, but then he heard the Lord says that he was a covenant-keeping God, and for the sake of his grandfather's prayer, that he will obtain mercy, and so the Lord took him out. Then Pastor Peter said to him,
Your family gave up on you being a father, the doctor gave up, and then God used that precious man of God, and everything that he said came to pass. And instead of honoring God, by building a church, and letting your light shine, you and your wife allowed pride to creep in, distance yourself from your background, as if you were born rich, and run away from everything and everyone.
That was why I disliked Leroy. He reminded me too much of a past that I had escaped. A poverty in the village that I did not want to remember.
It is incredible to me how merciful God was to you and your family. Even in the face of open rebellion and great unthankfulness, 12 years after you run away with the children, Nathan, whose name meant gift from God, and Betsy, whose name meant pledge to God. God sent you another unexpected blessing in Isabel, whose name means devoted to God, and still you did not turn. God sent you signs through your children's name, and still neither you or your wife took heed, and turned back to God. This same son-in-law that you despised, I have heard him and his wife, your daughter, prayed countless times for your family's salvation. You almost caused the demise of your entire family, to be condemned to hell, had it not been for the mercies of God. With your 2 eldest believing that they are self-made, the level of pride that you opened your heart to was unbelievable, and you pass it down to your children.
I am truly ashamed of myself, especially since God continued to bless me through the years.
Your behavior was like that of King Saul, who forget where God took him from? Samuel had to remind him in 1 Samuel 15:17 of a time when he was small in his own eyes, but he allowed pride and jealousy to destroy him. That son-in-law that you despise was God's last chance for you and your family, because had he not met with your daughter, who was earnestly praying for your salvation, the outcome could have been different. Look at how the enemy used you to almost destroy his life. You were so blinded by pride because of the measure of success, forgetting where it all came from, that it was from God. That pride caused you not to acknowledge what God and others did for you. As such, you refused to accept your dependence on God. It was no surprise that you distance yourself from your beginning, and try to embrace a false autonomy about yourself. You then put yourself and your family into a self-made fortress, where you think that you are superior to others. Pride is the main door by which the devil enters the heart. It causes the carrier eyes to be on themselves. However, when we are full of ourselves, there is no room for God. We need to be empty so that God can fill us. But if we are too full of ourselves, full of pride, the main door by which Satan uses to hinder the work of God, as he did with you, then we have no room left for God.
You are right, Pastor. That was why I run away, hindering the work of God for my village people for over 30 years now. Pastor, I want to return back to the arms of my Savior. I want to rededicate my life back to God, and spend the rest of my life serving God, and I will give back double what I withhold for over 30 years.
Pastor Peters led Marcus back to the Lord. He wept bitterly, thanking God for not taking him in his sinful condition. Marcus changed his life, and after 6 months his son Nathan and Betsy accepted Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. Upon her parents' confession, Isabel reunited back with Leroy, who now go together with his father-in-law all over, to tell all who will listen about the day when God gave him mercy and took him out of the burning flames. God also gave Jane a supernatural healing, of which she testified of the goodness of God. Isabel and Leroy travels far and wide telling their testimony, how God sent Leroy to Isabel's life, because he had a plan for her family that Isabel did not know about. Indeed, God revived the village, but only after a restoration of certain things were made. What have God told you to do that you have not done? Did you waste years before you repented and surrendered all to Jesus? In Joel 2:25, God tells us that, I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. The enemy is gaining ground in the spiritual realm every day. He creeps into some hearts, churches, or he corrupts some doctrine there, or he tempts this one there, like he did with Marcus and Jane. However, we are assured by the word of God, that greater is he that is in us, than he who is in the world. We see from this story that something was broken, a connection, even though the children were not aware. We see it is indeed not the will of God for none to perish. We see through Marcus and Jane's rebellion, the Lord was waiting to bring them back to himself. As you watch this story, it is our prayer that God will pluck you from the burning branch, and call you to himself, if you have never surrendered your life to Christ. To those who are already saved, know that God will keep you strong, as you cast all your cares upon the one who cares for you. In this story, we see how Marcus's and Jane's unthankful heart blinded them to the fact of where they started, to the fact that they had obtained help from both God and man. May we love God enough to honor and obey his words, thus loving our brothers and sisters, and fighting for them. To those like Marcus and Jane who have left their first love, may you return so that you can be welcomed, clothed like the prodigal, and be restored to your rightful place in the Father's loving arms, and allow the Lord to heal and restore your broken lives. God will make us what we ought to be, and supply that which is missing. May we be children who are listening, so that we do not wait until it is too late. Bye, and thank you for watching. It is our prayer that this story was a blessing to you. Be sure to subscribe, like and share. See you soon in part 3 of the chain. Have a wonderful day.